Hello, this is Bumble. Lachlan is busy doing basic chores, so he asked me to take care of this story. I will do my absolute best. This is another Stalktober episode of From the Heart of the Jakuls. So get ready, grab a quick and delicious snack, and settle into your favorite spot. Get all nice and comfy and listen close to Keep the Fire. Nat fought to keep the heavy slag iron ember braziers over her head. Her arms burned. Her lungs felt like they were made of soot as she strode down her section of pathway. Her legs seemed like they were made out of jelly. She wasn't even a quarter of the way down the slope. Everything was so heavy. Stumbling toward the edge of the cliff nearby, Ibik caught her by the waist, his tall frame and large muscles easily able to keep Nat from falling off the cliff. I may not be able to touch the metal, but I can at least keep you from falling to your death. He bent down to gently kiss his wife on her forehead. She kissed him back, but weakly. She didn't have too much more of this in her. But seeing him smile and step away to watch after her, Nat put one foot in front of the other and continued to clamber and fumble her way down the rocky paths towards the canyon far below them. She almost felt good about how much further she was getting than the last few times, until it began to downpour upon both of them. She cried out in rage and hate as she checked the dying embers as the fire snuffed out right before her eyes. Back up to the top, Ibik called out, gesturing pleasantly to one of the glow-sighted that came to find them. Tabor only knows how they knew every time the moment the fire went out, but he escorted them all the way to the doorless frame of the Flamekeeper hut. Back up to the top, Ibik called out, gesturing pleasantly to one of the glow-sighted that came to find them. Tabor only knows how they knew every time the moment the fire went out, but he escorted them all the way to the doorless frame of the Flamekeeper hut. Nat knew what to do. Ibik sat down within the tiny hut, keeping his mouth shut and trying not to look like he was a burden rather than the support she knew all too well that he was. Bless him, and the light of Arlo that seemed to power the man. He was steadfast even now against all Nat had been putting herself through these past few weeks. At least she thought it was weeks. The Flamekeepers made sure that time around the canyon really didn't seem to pass or flow in the same way as anywhere else. How they did that, she would never figure out. Nat bent to the fire pit in the center of the circular mud hut, stoking the coals and adding fresh kindling to once more light the flame that must never die, yet always seemed to somehow. Nat had killed it at least a dozen times herself since she began this training. She carefully blew air and life into the flame as it sprung back into existence out of its hiding spot. Perhaps she was thinking about it too much. Perhaps it was just a name. "I'm not sure I can do this anymore," she complained as she began to prepare the two of them a simple meal. She'd give anything to allow Ibik to cook, if only to break up the monotony of it all. Plus, he was much better at the act than she could ever hope to be. "Rules are rules," Ibik would say to her when she tried to bring up the subject. "You could always quit," Ibik offered up with a bit of a laugh and a joking smile. Nat kept her razor-sharp tongue at bay. She'd already learned that lesson several times. There were a lot of rules to becoming a flamekeeper, the most difficult ones to follow, especially in the dark, mournful times like these, were those that restricted the speech of the student and the helper they chose to assist them. Ibik, having already been through this process during his own trials several times, reached out a consoling hand, squeezing her shoulder for just a moment before letting her go. They were being watched. True intimacy had been impossible since the start of all this mess. "Everyone quits their first few times through," he said, like he'd said a dozen times before. "I want to be different. I want to succeed the first time." Nat nearly moaned at the stress and ache she'd already put her body through. Ibik looked like he wanted to say more, but was choosing to hold his tongue. Nat silently flipped him his meal for the day, a honey-drenched fried hash brown of vegetable paste, starting to cook her own while he dug into the tiny meal with glee and gusto. "I failed this thing 8 times before you met me," Ibik began. Nat turned an incredulous face her husband's way. "Yes, it's a lie by omission. Yes, I'm awful for not telling you sooner. But you were so excited about doing it for yourself, like your father and mother. She must have been carved out of rocks to complete the trial in 4 attempts." A gleaming-eyed glow-sighted checked in on them, peering as if from nowhere, only to fade back to nothingness a few moments later. "She was very brutal and hard," Nat said. "Often I wondered if I'd ever be even half as tough as she was." "You don't have to do things she did to be yourself," Ibik offered up in that wise, simple way of his. Nat stuffed the last cake she wanted to eat for a few months into her mouth and smiled at her husband, chewing and swallowing very slowly and plainly. "I quit," she managed around the fairly delicious and boring snack after eating it day in and day out for weeks. He hugged her and tears welling from his eyes as pure joy sprang across his face, the relief setting in. They were done with this for quite some time. Several glow-sighted entered the tent with plates of food in each hand, offering them to the couple whose hungry eyes almost ate the feast for them. "This isn't a trick?" Ned asked while Epic picked up a sweet, dry fruit, shoving the whole thing in his mouth. "It is not a trick, Firetender Nat." One of the glow-sighted addressed her calmly and evenly. Are you serious right now? I thought, what, She began to say, even as she stuffed some meat, actual cooked flesh of beasts, into her mouth. "That is something we tell all new recruits, to weed out the riffraff and such. Honestly, it's been decades since anyone has lasted as long as you did their first time through." The ancient-looking glow-sighted, his solid yellow eyes blazing like an eternal fire, sat beside them, looking quite content with himself. Ipic came close, but even he didn't stay out here for a full 4 months. 4 months? It hasn't been that long. Has it? The days? Time's so different. The canyon obscures and tosses the light about. Part of the reason why we call it home. It messes with a person's ability to gauge time properly. But I thought, I'm not sure anymore. It's fine. This sort of thing happens with everyone. Spend enough time here without knowing the proper ways to still your mind and focus on the fire, and you too will lose track. What time it is, what day it is, how old you are, what your name is. It will all slip away in time. I must say, Ipic played his role magnificently. It must have been difficult for him not to tell you in all this time that after the first week, it doesn't even matter how long you're out here for. Everyone fails their first few trials. We had a few steps on, a few practices to get you to the bottom of the canyon. It's a matter of teaching people to accept and understand failure as necessary to life. Each time you fail one stage of the trials, will show you how others before you succeeded, and you teach yourself how to adapt those lessons to your eventual triumph. And now, you must eat, and we must leave back to the village. Keep one thing in mind. Never reveal what I just told you to anyone else. Not ever. Unless they too have completed the first trial by admitting defeat. That rule is absolute. And so it is. We have come to the end of our brief time together. I've been your host, Rumble, and this was Keep the Fire, another tale from the heart of the Jakuls. I hope you learned a lot. I know I did. And so, we must say goodbye again. Good night, everyone. Please leave your comments down below. Like and share to help us spread and grow. And feed hungry Brumble. That's me. And don't forget, we encourage each and every one of you to stay safe out there. Good luck, everybody. Goodbye.